In the dead of night, I was awakened by the sound of my husband's hushed voice on the phone. His plan had worked. Tomorrow, this house would be demolished. Then, all that was left was to get rid of his stupid wife. My body trembled, but I chose to remain silent. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. That night, I laid out my own plan in the stillness. And this is what happened the next day. Hello, how is everyone doing? I hope you are all in good health and blessed with fortune. Thank you for stopping by the Life Has a Story channel. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment below with where you're from. Okay, here is the story. A thin wisp of steam rose from the espresso cup on the marble tabletop, mingling with the scent of expensive cologne that filled the VIP lounge of a restaurant in Bellevue, Washington. Ethan Cole sipped his coffee slowly, trying to hide the tremor in his hands. It wasn't from the chill of the air conditioning, but from the surge of adrenaline. Across from him, a middle-aged man in a sharp gray suit was meticulously flipping through a thick binder of documents. He was the representative from a real estate development firm that had long been eyeing the land Ethan's house sat on. The location is perfect, Mr. Cole. Wide street access, and it's near the proposed new light rail station, the man murmured, without looking up from the blueprints. But the price you're asking is a bit above market rate. Ethan flashed a wry smile, one he had practiced in the mirror to win over business clients. You're not buying land, sir. You're buying the future. Once my house is leveled, you can build a 20-story condo tower there. The profit will be multiples of the small price difference we're debating now. The man finally closed the binder and gave a slow nod. Very well, we agree. The first payment installment will be wired in 3 days, following the notary's signature next week. But I need assurance that the original deed is in your possession and not held as collateral by any bank. Of course, Ethan answered quickly. Too quickly. His heart pounded in his chest. He needed that money immediately. His online gambling debts had soared into the millions, and loan sharks were starting to harass him at his office. The original deed is in my personal safe, secure. My wife doesn't even know the combination. The deal was struck with a swiftness that was almost dizzying. They shook hands, and Ethan felt as if a 1,000-ton weight had been lifted from his shoulders. In his mind, the future was already perfectly mapped out. Sell the land, pay off his gambling debts, then divorce Ava. He was sick of a marriage he found mind-numbingly boring. Ava was too rigid, too principled, and couldn't be brought to his colleagues' flashy parties. He craved freedom, and the remaining cash from the sale of the house would fund a new life with his mistress. Ethan sped his black sedan through the afternoon gridlock of the city. A light rain began to fall, casting a gloomy sheen on the streets, but Ethan's heart was soaring. He pictured Ava's face when he finally kicked her out. She would surely cry, beg, and plead at his feet. Ethan snorted with amusement. He was certain Ava wouldn't demand a share of their marital assets. His wife was far too naive for that, he thought. Ava was the type of woman whose world revolved around the grocery store, the kitchen, and her volunteer work at the local library. A woman who never questioned his business and always accepted whatever household allowance he gave her, even as the amount had dwindled recently. Ava's ignorance was Ethan's greatest asset. Arriving at the driveway of their lavish, modern, craftsman-style home, Ethan eyed the structure with a look that was both possessive and dismissive. This house had been a symbol of his success 5 years ago. Now, to him, it was just a pile of delayed cash. He felt no sadness that the building where he had built a life would soon be torn down by heavy machinery. To him, memories couldn't pay off debts. Ethan stepped inside. The comforting aroma of a home-cooked meal, roast chicken with rosemary, his favorite, greeted him instantly. In the living room, Ava Harrison was smoothing a runner on the coffee table. She wore a simple, elegant navy blue dress, her hair pulled back neatly. Her face was calm, clean of heavy makeup, a stark contrast to the red-lipped women Ethan usually encountered at downtown bars. "You're home," Ava greeted him softly. She moved toward him, intending to give him a welcome kiss. Ethan pulled away brusquely, avoiding her touch. "I'm tired." "Don't ask a lot of questions," he said curtly as he loosened his tie. He walked past her toward the stairs, but on the third step, he paused and turned back. He needed to plant the seed of his lie now, so there would be no drama next week when the bulldozers arrived. "Oh, Ava, next week some people might come by to measure the property. I'm planning a total renovation of the backyard and the front fence. So if you see some workers walking around, just let them be," Ethan lied with a straight face. Ava, still standing in the living room, watched her husband's back. There was no trace of anger on her beautiful face, only a look in her eyes that was hard to decipher. A renovation? But Ethan, didn't you say our savings were running low? Last month you told me business was tough. That's why you had to cut the household budget. Ethan glared, offended that his lie was being questioned. "What do you know about money? My business is back on track. A big project just came through. Your job is to take care of the house. Don't meddle in my finances. The important thing is you have food to eat and a nice bed to sleep in, right?" "All right, Ethan." "I'm sorry," Ava replied softly, lowering her gaze. Ethan smirked, satisfied with her submissiveness. He continued up the stairs to the master bedroom. Once in the room, the first thing he did was not change his clothes, but head straight for the large walk-in closet in the corner. He pushed aside a row of suits, revealing a hidden panel behind them. The matte black steel safe was still there, solid and securely locked. His fingers deftly keyed in the digital combination, his mistress's birthday. The indicator light flashed green, and the safe door opened with a satisfying click. Ethan peered inside. The stack of documents in a brown folder was still there, in the exact same position he had last seen it. "Safe," he whispered to himself. That deed was his key to freedom. He closed the safe again, certain he was in complete control of his family's fate. He was oblivious to the fact that downstairs, Ava had not returned to the kitchen. She was still standing at the foot of the stairs, staring up toward the master bedroom. The softness in her face had slowly faded, replaced by a gaze that was cold, sharp, and calculating, as if she were watching prey walk straight into a trap. The atmosphere at the dinner table that evening was utterly silent, punctuated only by the clinking of silverware against porcelain plates. Ava sat across from her husband, eating with slow, graceful movements. Occasionally, she glanced at Ethan, who was devouring his food with a gusto far greater than usual. The man was even humming a little tune between bites, a bizarre behavior considering that for months he had always come home with a sour face, complaining about how hard it was to make money. To Ava, this drastic mood swing was not a sign of improving fortunes, but a blaring danger signal. "Your cooking is decent tonight," Ethan commented briefly, without looking at his wife's face. He put down his fork and drained his glass of water. "I'm taking a hot shower after this. Don't bother me. I need to rest early. I have another important meeting tomorrow." "Of course, Ethan. Should I lay out a change of clothes for you?" Ava offered, keeping her tone low and obedient. "Just leave them on the bed," Ethan replied as he stood up. As they entered the master bedroom, he emptied his pockets, tossing his wallet and car keys carelessly onto the dresser. But there was one object he placed with slightly more care on the nightstand beside the bed: his smartphone. Ethan strode into the bathroom. Soon, the sound of a powerful shower stream could be heard, followed by Ethan's whistling echoing from behind the frosted glass door. The man was truly on top of the world, feeling as if everything was in the palm of his hand. He was so caught up in his false victory that he had forgotten the most basic principle of caution. The moment the bathroom door was shut, Ava's posture, which had been slightly stooped in deference, straightened instantly. The gentle look in her eyes transformed into one that was sharp and cold. She didn't prepare her husband's clothes right away. Instead, her steps took her to the nightstand where Ethan's phone lay. The screen was dark, securely locked. Ethan was the type of person who felt clever for changing his phone password regularly, thinking Ava would never be able to guess it. Last month, the password had been their wedding anniversary, a painful irony. Last week, it had changed to Ethan's own birthday. But Ava knew that 3 days ago, he had changed it again. Ava's slender fingers touched the screen, waking it up. Without a hint of hesitation, her fingers tapped in 6 digits, 021498. It wasn't Ava's birthday, nor was it their anniversary. It was the birthday of Jessica, the new secretary at Ethan's office, who had recently been working late with her husband. Ava knew the date not from asking, but from a birthday reminder notification that had popped up on Ethan's tablet, which was linked to the same Google account a month ago. The phone unlocked. Ava wasted no time. She wasn't looking for intimate photos that might hurt her feelings. She had passed that phase of heartache months ago. Her tears had long since dried up over something as trivial as an affair. What she was looking for now was proof of the plan to destroy her life. Her fingers expertly opened the green messaging app. There, pinned at the very top, was a contact named Bellevue Demolition. Ava opened the conversation. The contents were not about renovating the garden, as Ethan had boasted earlier. "Boss, heavy machinery is on standby at the yard. We'll be on site Monday at 9 a.m. sharp. Make sure the house is empty so we don't have any trouble with the neighbors," the sender wrote. Ethan's reply was brief but lethal. "Done. My wife is clueless about assets. I'll make sure she's gone by tomorrow, or I'll drag her out myself. The deed is safe with me." Ava stared at the screen without blinking. No sobs escaped her, no hands trembled. Instead, her heart felt as hard and cold as stone. Using her own phone, which she pulled from the pocket of her dress, she photographed the chat screen, ensuring every word was clearly legible as digital evidence. She then switched to a conversation with a contact named My Love. "Baby, just be patient. Next week, I'll be a rich divorcee. We can put a down payment on that condo in South Lake Union right away. Pack your bags. We're going on a real vacation after this land deal is settled," Ethan had written 2 hours earlier. Ava smiled cynically. "A rich divorcee," she muttered under her breath, almost inaudibly. "Or a penniless felon." The sound of the shower stopped. With swift but calm movements, Ava returned Ethan's phone to its original position, exactly as it had been. She slipped her own phone back into her pocket, then casually took Ethan's pajamas from the closet and laid them on the bed. Just as the bathroom door opened, Ethan emerged with a towel wrapped around his waist, steam rising from his body. He was completely unaware that in the last 5 minutes, his perfect mask had been utterly stripped away. "Did you get my clothes?" Ethan asked, not glancing toward the nightstand. "Yes, dear." "They're on the bed," Ava replied gently. "I'm going downstairs to clean up the kitchen and lock the front door." Ava left the master bedroom, closing the door softly behind her. However, she didn't head for the kitchen. Her steps turned toward the small library on the ground floor, a room Ethan rarely entered because he was allergic to books. It was in that room that Ava had built her fortress. She sat down at the desk and opened her old laptop, the one she had told Ethan was broken. The laptop booted up quickly, displaying stock market charts and PDF files on property law and white-collar crime. For the past year, while Ethan was busy gambling and cheating, Ava had been busy learning. She took online courses in asset management, learned how to read financial statements, and understood the loopholes in inheritance law and marital property division. Ethan thought his wife was just watching cooking tutorials on YouTube. In reality, Ava was mapping out a war strategy. Ava opened an encrypted messaging app on her laptop. She typed a message to someone named David Chen, Esquire Mr. Chen. "He has confirmed the demolition schedule for Monday morning. I have secured proof of the conversation. Will the new deed from the county recorder's office be ready for me to pick up tomorrow?" 3 dots appeared on the screen, indicating her correspondent was typing. "It's ready, Mrs. Harrison. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. at my office." Once you have that new deed in your hands, legally speaking, he is merely a guest in your own home. Ava took a long, deep breath and closed her laptop. She looked out the window toward the garden that was supposedly going to be renovated. Ethan might have a wicked plan, but he had forgotten one thing. A woman scorned can become the most meticulous architect of destruction. Tonight, Ethan could sleep soundly, dreaming of his money. But Ava would not sleep until she had ensured that dream turned into a nightmare. Ava's mind drifted back, traveling through time to a bleak night 3 months ago. The rain had been pouring down then, as if the Seattle sky itself was weeping for her marriage, which was already on the brink of collapse. The roar of thunder from that night still echoed in her ears. But what she remembered most was not the sound of nature, but the brutal pounding on the door and the pale, frantic face of Ethan as he stumbled home in utter disarray. It was in the early hours of the morning. Ethan, who always maintained a polished and fragrant image, looked like a madman. His work shirt was wrinkled, the top button torn off, and cold sweat beaded on his temples. He didn't greet Ava. He ran straight to the kitchen, gulping water directly from the pitcher with trembling hands, then paced the living room like a caged animal. His phone rang incessantly, but Ethan threw it onto the sofa in terror, as if the sleek device might explode at any moment. Ava, awakened by the commotion, came downstairs anxiously. Before she could even ask what was wrong, Ethan grabbed her by the shoulders. His grip was strong, painful, and filled with desperation. "Ava, you have to help me. Just this once. Please help me." Ethan's voice was hoarse, his eyes wild as he stared toward the front door, as if terrified a ghost might break it down. "They're going to kill me. They know my office address. They know this address. If I don't transfer the money by morning, it's over for me, Ava." That night, Ethan's mask of the successful executive crumbled completely. He confessed to losing a fortune in an overseas online gambling site. The amount was staggering, reaching over $2 million. The company funds he had been secretly using were gone, and now a syndicate of loan sharks was hunting him down. Ethan knelt at Ava's feet, wailing and begging his wife to liquidate the inheritance left by her late parents, the only personal asset Ava possessed and had fiercely protected. Ava looked at her husband with a shattered heart, not out of pity, but from the realization of how low this man had fallen. The inheritance from her parents, which was meant for their future children, was now being demanded to cover his gambling sins. Yet, in the midst of her emotional turmoil, Ava's logic kicked in. She remembered the advice of Mr. Chen, an old family friend and a lawyer, who had once told her, "If that greedy husband of yours ever needs money, don't just give it to him. Make it a transaction. Buy your freedom." "I can wire it tomorrow morning, Ethan," Ava said, her voice quiet but firm, causing Ethan's sobs to stop abruptly. "But the amount is huge. It's everything my father left me. I can't just give it away without any collateral." Ethan looked up, his face red and blotchy. "Collateral? I'm your husband, Ava. You're going to nickel and dime your own husband? My life is on the line. It's precisely because you are my husband that I don't want you to die a fool's death," Ava cut in calmly. She walked to a desk drawer in the corner, retrieving a folder she had coincidentally prepared a few days earlier on Mr. Chen's advice, as if she had predicted this day would come. "I will pay off all your gambling debts tonight through a priority wire transfer. But you have to sign this." Ava presented several documents on the table. Clearly written on them were a sale and purchase agreement and a power of attorney. The documents stated that Ethan was selling the house and land they lived on to Ava as repayment for the debt, and granting Ava full authority to transfer the deed into her name at any time without Ethan's future presence or consent. Ethan stared at the papers with a dazed look. He wasn't really reading the contents. His mind was too consumed with the terror of debt collectors. All he saw was a way out of his immediate problem. His arrogant logic told him this was just a domestic formality. Ava was his wife, a stupid, obedient woman. This signature was surely just to appease her so she would release the money. Once the storm passed, he could easily nullify or reclaim these papers. Who would believe Ava over him? "This is it? Just sign these papers?" Ethan asked impatiently. "Yes, sign here, above the notary seal. After that, I'll transfer the payment," Ava replied flatly. Without reading the clause stating that this power of attorney was irrevocable for any reason, Ethan snatched the pen with a rough, hasty movement. He scribbled his signature on all 3 copies. He didn't even care when Ava asked him for a thumbprint. All that mattered to him that night was saving his own skin. As soon as the ink was dry and Ava had sent him proof of the successful wire transfer, Ethan slumped to the floor, laughing hysterically with relief. He was safe. He felt like he had won. He had just plundered his wife's inheritance and felt he had lost nothing because the original deed to the house was still stored safely in his safe upstairs. Ethan didn't know that legally. From the moment he signed that document, he was merely a guest living in a house that now rightfully belonged to Ava. "Don't tell anyone about this. You hear me?" Ethan threatened that night after his crying had subsided, reverting to his dominant and ungrateful self. He went up to the bedroom, leaving Ava alone in the cold living room. Ava's reverie broke. She returned to the present, staring at her dark laptop screen. Ethan might have forgotten that wretched night, or perhaps he considered the document he signed to be meaningless scraps of paper. That very arrogance had made him careless. He was unaware that the signature he had scrawled in a panic 3 months ago was the death sentence for his own greed. Ava closed her eyes for a moment, saying a silent prayer of thanks. She hadn't built this trap. Ethan had dug his own grave. Ava was just helping to push him in. The Sunday morning sun shone brightly, mocking the tension that crept silently through the luxurious house. Ethan, already dressed in a crisp white polo shirt and a designer visor, stood on the patio inspecting his expensive set of golf clubs. The sharp scent of his cologne mingled with the fresh morning air. He whistled a little tune, appearing to thoroughly enjoy life, as if tomorrow, the day he planned to evict his wife, was just a minor administrative task. "Ava!" he shouted from the doorway, his voice echoing through the house. "I'll be home late this afternoon. Don't forget to clean out the back shed. Just throw out all that junk in there. The garbage truck will be here first thing tomorrow morning." Ava emerged from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. Her face was flat, showing none of the shock or sadness Ethan had expected. "All right, Ethan. Drive safe." Ethan grunted softly, slightly disappointed at the lack of drama or panicked questions from his wife. He got into his SUV, revved the engine, and sped away, leaving the automated gate to slowly close behind him. For Ethan, today was a premature victory celebration with his business partners on the golf course. But for Ava, the departing roar of the engine was the starting pistol for a silent operation. As soon as Ethan's car disappeared around the corner, Ava did not head to the shed as instructed. She locked the front door and walked purposefully to Ethan's private home office on the first floor. The room was usually off-limits to her. Ethan always said it was his war room, that business and women shouldn't mix. But today, the war room was unguarded. The office door was locked, of course. But Ava didn't need to break it down. She reached into her dress pocket and pulled out a duplicate key she had made a month ago, after discreetly taking the original from a pair of Ethan's dirty trousers before they went into the wash. With a smooth turn, the door opened. The smell of stale cigarette smoke and citrus air freshener hit her. The room was a mess, typical of the disorganized Ethan. Piles of paper were strewn across the desk, an ashtray was overflowing with butts, and a half-empty coffee mug from last night was starting to grow mold. Ava held her breath for a moment, suppressing her disgust, and sat down in her husband's oversized leather chair. She wasn't there to clean his mess. She was there to find the final nail for the coffin of Ethan's career. Kicking Ethan out of the house wasn't enough. Ava knew a cunning man like her husband would fight back. Ethan had connections, a silver tongue that could twist facts, and might even resort to physical violence if cornered. The only way to stop a venomous snake is to cut off its head, or in Ethan's case, to put him in prison. Ava turned on the high-end desktop computer on the desk. The screen lit up, asking for a password. Ethan, in his incredible arrogance, had never changed his home computer's password in 5 years. He felt Ava was too technologically inept to operate it. Ava typed Success88, the long-standing password, which was the name of Ethan's first fictitious company. The system unlocked. Ava immediately inserted a small flash drive into a USB port. Her heart beat a little faster. Not from fear of being caught. Ethan wouldn't even be at the golf course for another hour, but from the hunter's adrenaline upon finding the trail of her prey. Her fingers danced across the keyboard and mouse, opening folder after folder. She was looking for the financial reports Ethan worked on at home. Ethan often complained that the office computers were monitored by auditors, so he frequently handled his side projects at home for security. How foolish. Ava found a folder named Waterfront Redevelopment Project. She opened it. Inside were dozens of Excel spreadsheets and scanned receipts. Ava's eyes, now trained to read financial statements, the result of an online forensic accounting course she had taken in secret, immediately spotted glaring inconsistencies. In the company's project expense column, there was a purchase for A-grade concrete materials worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But when Ava cross-referenced the transaction date with a physical invoice she had once found tucked in Ethan's suit pocket, The date and amount were an exact match for the payment for the Italian marble that now covered their living room floor. Ava dug deeper. She found a cash flow for a landscape consultant with a fantastical fee, which was then transferred to Ethan's personal account and withdrawn in cash 2 days later, most likely to pay off a gambling debt. This wasn't just minor fraud. This was massive, systematic embezzlement of company funds. Ethan was using money from the company where he was a director of operations to finance his lavish lifestyle and gambling addiction, then falsifying reports to make it look like project costs. "Got you," Ava hissed coldly. She copied all the folders, the fake financial reports, transfer receipts, fictitious invoices, all of it moved onto the flash drive in minutes. The green progress bar on the screen seemed to move slowly, testing her patience. Ava stared at the screen without blinking, imagining Ethan's face when the prosecutor presented all this evidence in court. Ethan thought he was going to lose his house, but he had no idea he was also about to lose his freedom. Once the transfer was complete, Ava ejected the flash drive and clutched it tightly. The small object in her hand was more deadly than a firearm. She shut down the computer, making sure to clear the access history, then rearranged the chair and papers on the desk to look exactly as they had been. Ava left the office and locked it behind her. She went to her room, picked up her phone, and sent a brief message to Mr. Chen. "The evidence is complete. Embezzlement of company assets and money laundering. I am sending a digital copy now via encrypted cloud. Please prepare the report so the police can move in tomorrow morning, concurrently with the house repossession." Mr. Chen's reply came almost instantly. "Excellent work, Mrs. Harrison. With this evidence, he won't be able to apply for bail. Tomorrow will be a very long day for your husband." Ava put her phone down and sat on the edge of her bed. She looked around the room she had occupied for 5 years. Tomorrow, this room would no longer be a place where she shed tears. Tomorrow, these walls would be the silent witnesses to the downfall of a man's arrogance, a man who thought he was a king. Ava took a long, deep breath, inhaling the scent of freedom that was drawing ever closer. She was ready. The gray clouds hanging over Seattle that afternoon seemed to hide the great secret unfolding beneath them. While Ethan was busy hitting golf balls and laughing with his colleagues on the other side of town, Ava was on a journey that would legally and permanently change her status. She didn't use her personal car, worried Ethan might get suspicious if he saw the added mileage or idly checked the car's GPS location. Ava chose to order a rideshare, sitting calmly in the back seat with a black leather briefcase on her lap. Her destination was not a shopping mall or a community event, as she might have told an inquisitive neighbor. The car navigated through traffic toward a 3-story office building in downtown Seattle. The nameplate on the front gleamed with dignified gold letters, Reed and Associates, Notary Public and Title Services. As Ava stepped inside, the scent of old paper and crisp air conditioning greeted her. The atmosphere was quiet, filled only with the soft hum of printers and keyboards from behind glass partitions. A receptionist, who already knew her, smiled warmly and ushered her into the main conference room. There, Mr. Chen was waiting. The senior lawyer with silver hair was not alone. He was accompanied by Miss Evelyn Reed, the notary who had been handling Ava's paperwork for the past month. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Harrison. Please, have a seat, Mr. Chen greeted her with a reassuring, fatherly tone. On the large mahogany table, a thick, patterned folder lay closed. Ava sat down, her heart beating a little faster. Today was the day of reckoning. All her hard work, her courage in suppressing her fear, and her patience in dealing with Ethan's arrogance, it all came down to the contents of that folder. As per your instructions, and based on the absolute power of attorney signed by Mr. Cole 3 months ago, the process of transferring the title for the land and building was fully completed today, Miss Reed began formally. The notary slowly opened the folder, pulling out a small book with a dark green cover and the state seal embossed in gold on the center. This is the deed of trust. However, this was not the same book stored in Ethan's safe. The deed in Ethan's safe was now nothing more than a dead archive, an empty shell with no legal power in the eyes of the state. Miss Reed handed the book to Ava. "Please check it, ma'am. The physical and juridical data pages have been updated by the county recorder's office." The name of the previous title holder, Ethan Cole, has been struck and voided. The new title holder's name is now officially printed below it. Ava's hand trembled slightly as she received the green book. She opened it to the indicated page. Her eyes traced the lines of text. In the owner's column, her full name was printed in bold capital letters, Ava Harrison. There was no mention of her husband's name, no status of joint ownership. The 5,000-square-foot property and the luxurious house upon it were now hers, absolutely. Legally speaking, Mr. Chen continued, leaning forward slightly for emphasis, since this deed was issued yesterday afternoon, Mr. Cole no longer has any right to a single inch of that property. The old document he may still be holding is nothing more than a souvenir. If he tries to sell it to that condo developer tomorrow, the transaction will be null and void by law, because he would be selling something that does not belong to him. Ava caressed the surface of the deed. The cool, smooth paper gave her a sense of immense strength. For so long, Ethan had threatened to throw her out. He had always said the house was his castle, and Ava was just a guest. Now, the wheels of fate had turned a silent 180 degrees. It was Ethan who was now a guest in Ava's house, sleeping under Ava's roof and taking shelter from the rain beneath Ava's shingles. "Thank you, Mr. Chen, Miss Reed," Ava said, her voice clear and without a trace of doubt. "Can the condo developer sue me later?" "They cannot," Mr. Chen answered firmly. "You were never a party to the backroom deal your husband made. Their agreement is binding only on Ethan personally. Since he promised them land that wasn't his, it constitutes fraud on his part against the developer. That is a criminal matter between them. Your position as the legal owner is protected by law. Your house is safe. It cannot be seized for your husband's debts, and it cannot be demolished without your consent." Ava nodded in understanding. A faint, very faint smile touched her lips. This was a silent victory. There were no cheers, no celebrations, only the cold, binding certainty of the law. "Keep this safe, ma'am. Don't let your husband see it before the time is right," Miss Reed advised. "Of course," Ava replied. She placed the new deed into her briefcase, tucking it into a hidden compartment secured with a double zipper. The drive home felt different. The Seattle sky was still overcast, but Ava's chest felt light. She looked at the congested streets with new eyes. She was no longer a helpless wife, waiting to be divorced and thrown out. She was the rightful owner of the ground she stood on. When she arrived home, the house was still quiet. Ethan had not returned. Ava entered the house, which now had a different aura. She walked through the living room, touching the walls, feeling the sofa, and looking up at the high ceiling. "My house," she whispered softly. She did not take the new deed to the master bedroom. That was too risky. Ava hid the original deed in the safest, most unexpected place, inside a box of adult diapers that had belonged to her late mother, still stored in a clean part of the shed, a box Ethan would be disgusted to even touch. Meanwhile, the old, original but now fake deed sat innocently in Ethan's safe upstairs, waiting to be swapped with blank paper later that night. The trap was perfectly set. Ethan would walk into this house later that evening with the arrogance of a king, completely unaware that his crown had been stolen right from under his nose, legally and silently. The night sky outside the large glass window was inky black, without a single star daring to show itself. A heavy rain began to fall, drumming a monotonous rhythm on the roof tiles. The gloomy weather was a stark contrast to the mood of Ethan, who had just walked into the house. The man was whistling a cheerful little tune, a sound alien to Ava's ears, as she sat reading a book in the living room. Ethan looked like a man who had just won the lottery, and in his mind, that's exactly what he felt he had done. In his right hand, he carried a white paper bag with the logo of a famous gourmet donut shop. The sweet aroma of baked dough mixed with butter and chocolate instantly filled the room, attempting to mask the scent of deceit that was far more pungent. Ethan placed the bag on the coffee table with a theatrically grand gesture, as if he had just brought home a treasure for his queen. "A dozen artisan donuts," he announced with a wide smile that didn't reach his eyes. He loosened his tie and dropped himself onto the plush sofa next to Ava. "Go on, eat one. It's not often I have time to pick these up. Consider it a small celebration." Ava slowly closed her book. She looked at the donut box, then at her husband's face. A wave of nausea suddenly rose in her throat. How ironic, Ava thought. Her husband intended to sell the roof over their heads, divorce her, and throw her out like trash, yet he was trying to assuage his guilt, if he even had any, with a $20 box of donuts. A cheap bribe for an expensive betrayal. "Thank you, Ethan," Ava replied, her tone perfectly controlled and flat. She opened the box, took a piece, and ate it slowly. Not because she was hungry, but because she had to play her part until the final curtain fell tomorrow morning. "You seem unusually cheerful today. Did the project go well?" Ethan chuckled, grabbing a large donut and devouring it greedily. "Better than well, Ava. It went perfectly. Tomorrow is the big day. That's why I need to talk to you seriously about the plan for tomorrow morning." Ava put down her half-eaten donut and looked Ethan straight in the eye. "About the garden renovation?" "Exactly." Ethan nodded confidently, wiping a smudge of chocolate from the corner of his mouth with the back of his hand. "Look, Ava. First thing tomorrow morning, around 9, the construction crew is going to arrive. They're bringing heavy equipment. It's going to be incredibly loud. Dust everywhere. It won't be healthy for you. So, I think it's best if you leave the house before they get here." Ethan said this casually, as if he were telling Ava to go grocery shopping, not permanently evicting her. He couldn't even meet her eyes as he said it, choosing instead to pretend to be busy grabbing a napkin. He had already scripted it in his head. Let Ava leave under the pretext of avoiding the dust. Then, once the house was leveled and the money was in his account, he would send her a divorce text. The perfect coward. "Go where, Ethan?" Ava asked, fishing. "Wherever you want. Your parents' place back in Oregon, maybe? Or check into a hotel for a day or two?" Ethan replied breezily, waving his hand in the air. "The important thing is that you take all your personal belongings. Your clothes, your jewelry, your important documents, take it all. I'm just worried they'll get dirty from the construction dust, or stolen by the workers. You know how those guys can be, sticky fingers." Ava suppressed the cynical smile that almost broke through. Ethan was telling her to secure her assets for fear of them being stolen by workers, when the real thief was sitting right in front of her, happily eating a donut. "All right, Ethan. As it happens, I've already packed," Ava said calmly. "I've put my clothes and valuables in suitcases. I was planning to call a car service at dawn to move my things out." Hearing this, Ethan's eyes lit up. He looked surprised and relieved. He hadn't expected Ava to be so compliant. He thought he would have to expend extra energy, persuading or yelling at his wife to get her to pack. It turned out Ava's stupidity and obedience were truly a gift. "Excellent! That's excellent!" Ethan exclaimed enthusiastically, even patting Ava's knee lightly. "You really are an understanding wife, Ava. This way, I can focus on supervising the workers without worrying about you coughing up a lung from all the dust. Don't you worry. After this renovation is done, our lives are going to change completely. You won't even recognize this house." "Yes, Ethan, I'm sure I won't recognize our lives after tomorrow," Ava replied. The sentence was a double entendre, a stark truth completely misinterpreted by Ethan. He thought she was talking about a beautiful new garden. She was talking about him rotting behind bars. After finishing 3 donuts, Ethan stood up, stretching his muscles. He glanced at the designer clock on the living room wall. 9 p.m. "I'm heading to bed, Ava. I have to be up early to greet the contractors. Don't stay up too late, you'll oversleep. Make sure you and your things are cleared out of here before 9 tomorrow," Ethan commanded. His tone had reverted to that of an arrogant boss, leaving the remnants of his fake gentleness on the table with the donut crumbs. "Okay, Ethan. Sleep well," Ava said. Ethan sauntered up to the second floor, his steps sounding heavy yet full of confidence. Ava listened to every creak of the stairs under his feet. She waited 1 minute, 5 minutes, until she heard the master bedroom door close and lock from the inside. Silence once again enveloped the living room. Ava remained on the sofa, staring at the open donut box. She slowly closed it and threw it in the kitchen trash. She didn't need that sweet food. Tonight, she needed a sharp mind and a calm spirit. Ava went around turning off the living room lights, leaving only the dim glow from the garden lamps outside. She sat in the darkness, her eyes fixed on the staircase. Up there, Ethan was probably pulling up his blanket, smiling at the thought of millions of dollars and freedom with another woman. He was sleeping peacefully on a time bomb whose seconds were ticking away. Ava glanced at her watch. It was still too early to make her move. She had to wait until Ethan was truly in a deep sleep. She needed a few more hours, until the dead of night, a time when God is said to be closest to the brokenhearted, and a time when a betrayed wife would take back what was hers in the most elegant way possible. Tonight was Ethan's last night as master of his own castle. Tomorrow, when the sun rose, he would wake up a homeless man with nothing but the clothes on his back. And Ava would ensure that scenario played out flawlessly. The hands on the living room clock slowly shifted, pointing to 2:30 a.m. The house was so still it felt as though time itself was holding its breath, waiting. The rain that had been falling since the afternoon had finally stopped, leaving behind a bone-chilling cold and the scent of wet earth that seeped through the vents. In that deafening silence, Ava had just finished her quiet prayers, her worn Bible resting on the nightstand. She didn't go back to sleep. Sleep was a luxury she couldn't afford tonight. Ava stood before the mirror in her room, the guest room she had occupied for the last 3 months, since they had stopped sharing a bed. She studied her reflection. A woman in a simple, practical black outfit, her hair neatly covered, her eyes no longer holding any trace of doubt. Tonight, she was not a devoted wife. Tonight, she was an executor, reclaiming what was hers. With her footsteps muffled by thick socks, Ava left the guest room. She ascended the stairs to the second floor with extreme caution. Each step felt like a landmine. A single creak could ruin everything. But this house was her ally. Ava knew exactly which floorboards would groan under pressure, and she avoided them with practiced muscle memory. She paused at the door of the master bedroom. A soft snoring sound came from within. Ethan was sound asleep, probably having beautiful dreams of the millions he believed would be his tomorrow. Ava reached into her pocket and pulled out the duplicate key to the master bedroom. With an incredibly slow, deliberate motion, she inserted the key into the lock. Click. The sound of the tumblers turning was barely a whisper, but to Ava, it was as loud as a firecracker. She held her breath, waiting for a reaction from inside. Silence. Ethan's snoring continued at a steady rhythm. Ava pushed the door open. The scent of lavender air freshener mixed with Ethan's masculine scent greeted her. The room was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of a street lamp filtering through a small gap in the curtains. Ava's eyes, already adjusted to the dark, scanned the room. Ethan was lying on his back in the center of the king-sized bed, a comforter covering half his body, his mouth slightly agape. Wasting no time, Ava moved toward the large walk-in closet. She knew exactly where the safe was, hidden behind a row of Ethan's neatly hung business suits. With a steady hand, Ava pushed the suits aside, revealing the black steel box that was the heart of her husband's wicked plan. Ava's fingers hovered over the safe's digital keypad. She didn't have to think twice. The numbers were seared into her memory as a symbol of her husband's betrayal. She pressed 140298, the birthday of Ethan's mistress. A small indicator light flashed green, followed by a very soft beep and the sound of the locking mechanism disengaging. Ava pulled the handle. Using a small penlight she held between her teeth, she illuminated the interior. There lay the assets Ethan was so proud of: several stacks of cash, gold bars, and a clear plastic folder containing the deed of trust for the house. Ava took the folder. She opened it, confirming it was the original green document with the county's holographic seal. This was the object that made Ethan feel so powerful. Quickly, Ava removed the original deed and slipped it into the crossbody bag she wore. In its place, she took a stack of plain office paper she had already cut to the exact size of the deed, held together with a large paperclip to mimic its thickness and weight. She slid the stack of blank paper into the same plastic folder and placed it back in its original position inside the safe. She didn't stop there. Ava also took the jewelry box containing the gold bars, which had actually been bought with their joint savings but which Ethan claimed as his own. She also took the stacks of cash. She didn't feel like she was stealing. This was back pay for the spousal support Ethan had failed to provide for the last 2 years, plus an advance on the division of their marital assets. She left the safe devoid of value, containing only convincing-looking trash. Ava closed the safe door, twisted the lock, and rearranged Ethan's suits until not a single crease looked out of place. She backed away slowly, her eyes never leaving the figure of Ethan, who was still fast asleep. He shifted slightly, murmuring something in his sleep, making Ava's heart stop for a second. But Ethan just hugged a pillow and went back to snoring. Ava slipped out of the room, closing and locking the door behind her. Once she was in the hallway, she let out a long breath she had been holding. Her legs felt weak, but adrenaline kept her moving. The hardest part was over. Now, it was time for the final stage. She went downstairs and glanced at her watch. 3:15 a.m., right on schedule. A text came through on her phone. "Team is at the gate, ma'am, ready to move." Ava opened the front door and the main gate without turning on the porch light. A mid-sized black moving truck was parked in front of the house. Its engine was running, but it was remarkably quiet. This was clearly the premium moving service she had hired, with specific instructions for a silent operation. 4 men in black uniforms descended swiftly. They didn't speak much, just nodded respectfully at Ava. Only the items with red stickers in the living room and the downstairs bedroom. Ava whispered her instructions. The men moved like ghosts. They wore special footwear that made no sound. With stunning efficiency, they carried out the cardboard boxes Ava had been packing for days and hiding in the guest room. The boxes filled with her clothes, books, personal kitchenware, and important documents were loaded into the belly of the truck in less than 20 minutes. The house was now scrubbed clean of any trace of Ava. The photos of her on the walls were gone. Her favorite vase was gone. The living room now felt cold and foreign, just like its owner's heart. After the truck departed with her belongings, heading to her new rental apartment, Ava did one last thing. She walked to the dining table where Ethan usually sat demanding breakfast. On the cold marble surface, Ava placed 2 items side by side. First, her white gold wedding ring with its small diamond, the one Ethan had placed on her finger with sweet promises that now tasted like ash. Second, a large brown envelope containing the divorce petition her lawyer had filed online yesterday afternoon, complete with a formal eviction notice for the property under the name of the new owner, Ava Harrison. Ava didn't write a long, emotional farewell letter. There was no drama, no recriminations. Her actions had already spoken louder than words. She grabbed her personal car keys, a car she had bought with her own inheritance money before she was married, giving Ethan no claim to it. Faintly, she could hear the distant tolling of early morning church bells, calling the faithful to the first service of the day. The sky in the east was beginning to show a thin line of dark purple light. Ava walked out of that house for the last time. She did not look back. She started the car engine, and as its wheels rolled over the wet asphalt, leaving the property behind, Ava felt a 1,000-ton weight lift from her shoulders. Inside the now silent house, Ethan was still sound asleep, hugging a pillow, oblivious to the fact that he had just lost his wife, his fortune, and the roof over his head in a single, silent night. He had gone to sleep a king, but fate had decreed he would wake up a loser. The wheels of Ava's sedan cut through the silence of the still empty Seattle streets. The orange glow of the streetlights flashed rhythmically across her windshield, creating a hypnotic pattern of light. Ava gripped the steering wheel, her hands still covered in thin leather gloves. There was no music playing, only the soft hum of the engine and the rush of wind against the car. With every mile that distanced her from that house, Ava felt the invisible chains that had been choking her for so long begin to loosen, giving her room to finally breathe. She glanced at the rearview mirror. No one was following. The road behind her was empty, vast, dark, and silent, just like the past she had just left behind. The lavish craftsman-style house was now just a coordinate on a digital map, holding no more emotional meaning for her. The building had transformed into a mere asset, a property in her investment portfolio, no longer a home. 30 minutes later, Ava's car turned into the lobby area of a high-end apartment building in Bellevue. The security guard on duty greeted her respectfully, recognizing the car from the registration she had filed a week ago. This was her new fortress. A short-term penthouse lease she had chosen for its strategic location and tight security. Here, Ethan would never be able to find her, let alone touch her. Ava parked in the residence-only garage and stepped out. The click of her heels echoed sharply on the concrete floor. The moving truck had arrived 15 minutes earlier. When Ava reached her unit on the 25th floor, the movers had already finished neatly arranging her boxes in the living room. They worked quickly and professionally, as befitted the high price she had paid. After tipping them and ensuring the door was securely locked, Ava found herself alone, truly alone. She walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling window that offered a panoramic view of the Seattle skyline. On the eastern horizon, a reddish-purple glow was beginning to spread, chasing away the darkness of the night. Dawn was breaking. Ava rested her forehead against the cool glass. A wave of immense physical exhaustion washed over her, but her spirit felt wide awake. There were no tears of goodbye. Ava touched her chest, making sure her heart was still there. She felt empty, but it was a clean emptiness, like a blank canvas ready for a new painting, not the hollow void of loss. The sound of distant church bells echoed faintly from a steeple far below the skyscraper. The serene sound felt like a call to a new beginning. Ava went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. The simple act feeling like a baptism, washing away the last vestiges of the falsehoods she had lived under as Ethan's wife. She simply knelt on the soft carpet by the large window, her hands clasped together as she faced the nascent dawn. Kneeling there, Ava no longer prayed for patience to endure a tyrannical husband. That prayer had been answered. This time, she prayed for strength and for justice. She surrendered herself completely, believing that the step she had taken was a righteous stand against oppression. She was not a disobedient wife. She was a human being, defending her dignity. After her moment of prayer, Ava did not go back to sleep. The sun began to rise, bathing the city in a warm, golden light. The clock on the wall read 6 a.m. 2 hours until showtime. Ava rose and went to the bathroom. She showered and then stood before her closet. Today, she would not wear the simple dresses that made her look soft and submissive. Ava chose a long, tailored blazer in a dark maroon color, its sharp cut exuding authority. She paired it with an elegant silk scarf with a geometric pattern and a gold pin on her left shoulder. Her makeup was minimal but defined, neatly shaped eyebrows and a matte brick-red lipstick. She looked at the woman in the mirror. The woman seemed like a stranger, but Ava liked her. It was the face of a winner. Her phone vibrated on the vanity table. Mr. Chen's name appeared on the screen. "Good morning, Mrs. Harrison. Our team and the police have gathered at the rendezvous point 500 yards from the house. We are awaiting your command. Are you sure you want to witness this in person?" Ava typed her reply with steady fingers. "Proceed as planned, Mr. Chen. The moment he steps outside, arrest him. I will monitor from a car across the street. Do not let him get away." Ava picked up her oversized sunglasses and put them on. The world around her grew slightly darker, but her focus became sharper. She grabbed her handbag, which now contained the original deed in her name, the ultimate weapon that would break the neck of Ethan's arrogance. Ava strode out of the apartment, ready to return to the battlefield, not as a victim, but as the judge who would deliver the sentence. Her traces in the old house might be gone, but her presence today would become a nightmare Ethan would never forget for the rest of his life. The bright morning sunlight streamed through the gaps in the master bedroom curtains, falling directly on Ethan's still sleeping face. The man stirred, blinking his heavy eyes. He reached over to the other side of the bed. It was empty and cold. A small smile formed on his lips. The memory of last night's conversation replayed in his mind. He had successfully made Ava leave the house voluntarily, without any tearful drama or exhausting shouting matches. Ethan sat up on the edge of the bed, stretching his back muscles. The digital clock on the nightstand showed 7:45 a.m. He was a little later than usual, but today was an exception. Today, he wasn't an employee rushing through traffic to clock in. Today, he was a king about to sell his castle for a new, grander kingdom. He felt light, as if the multi-million-dollar debt that had haunted him for months had evaporated with the morning dew. He got up and walked out of the room with a leisurely stride, still in his luxurious silk pajamas. The house felt strange. Usually by this time, the aroma of bacon and coffee would be wafting from the kitchen, accompanied by the clatter of a spatula on a pan. But this morning, the two-story house was silent. a chilling silence, like that of a magnificent marble tomb. The sound of Ethan's footsteps descending the wooden stairs echoed off the empty walls. "Ava?" he called out, just as a formality. No answer. Ethan chuckled to himself. "Good, she really is obedient. Left at the crack of dawn like a fired maid," he muttered. Downstairs, Ethan headed for the dining room, hoping Ava had at least left him a final breakfast. But the table was bare. No food cover, no dirty dishes. Then Ethan's eyes fell upon two foreign objects lying conspicuously in the center of the gleaming marble table. A white gold ring with a small diamond, their wedding ring, and a large, sealed brown envelope. Ethan picked up the ring, weighing it in his hand with a dismissive look before slipping it into his pajama pocket without a hint of remorse. Then he grabbed the brown envelope and tore it open aggressively. His eyes scanned the contents. The letterhead of a law firm was printed at the top, followed by bold text, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." Instead of being shocked or sad, Ethan burst out laughing. The sound echoed through the room, jarring and full of arrogance. "Unbelievable!" he exclaimed, tossing the papers back onto the table. "I don't even have to bother with the courthouse paperwork. She did it all for me. Thank you, my stupid wife. You've made my life 1,000 times easier." To Ethan, the divorce petition was a free ticket to freedom. He assumed Ava had left because she felt she was no longer worthy of him, or perhaps because she was afraid of a poor life after the house was sold. How naive! Suddenly, the floor of the house vibrated slightly. The vibration was followed by a low rumble that grew steadily louder, like the sound of an approaching iron beast. Rumble, rumble. Ethan glanced at the wall clock. 8:55 a.m. His face lit up. That must be the demolition crew from the developer. They were right on time, bringing the heavy machinery to level this house, just as agreed. Ethan's adrenaline surged. To him, that rumbling was the sound of money being delivered. Without bothering to shower or change, Ethan walked to the front door. He wanted to greet his fortune-bearing guests in the casual style of a powerful landowner. He swung the main door wide open, letting the morning air rush in. In front of his tall gate, the scene was indeed impressive. A bright yellow excavator was being unloaded from a massive flatbed truck. Its diesel engine roared, shattering the tranquility of the elite neighborhood. Ethan grinned widely, waving at the operator as if greeting an old friend. However, Ethan's smile slowly faded as his eyes caught another detail that was not in his imagined scenario. Parked behind the flatbed truck were two police cruisers, their blue rotator lights flashing silently, and next to them, a luxury black sedan, not a contractor's vehicle, was parked gracefully. Police? Ethan thought, confused, but his blind optimism quickly dismissed his suspicion. Ah, the developer probably hired a police escort to prevent any protests from the neighbors. Very professional. They know I'm an important man. Brimming with confidence, Ethan walked out across the lawn and opened his iron gate. He stood on the sidewalk with his hands on his hips, his chin held high, watching the people getting out of the vehicles. A middle-aged man in a sharp suit emerged from the black sedan. It wasn't the developer's representative he had met at the restaurant. This man had a stern face and was holding a leather folder. Behind him, 4 uniformed police officers got out, their hands hovering near their belts, their gazes locked on Ethan. Ethan frowned, slightly offended at not seeing the friendly faces he expected. "Where's Mr. Henderson from the development firm?" he asked, his tone demanding. He raised his voice to be heard over the excavator's engine. "I'm the owner of this house, Ethan Cole. What's with all the police? Are you trying to panic my neighbors?" The man in the suit, Mr. Chen, stepped forward until he was face to face with Ethan. There was no business smile on his face, only the cold gaze of a professional looking at a suspect. "Good morning, Mr. Ethan Cole, Mr. Chen said, his formal tone freezing the blood in Ethan's veins. "My name is David Chen. I am the legal counsel for the rightful owner of this land and property. And these gentlemen behind me are from the police department. They have a warrant for your arrest." Ethan's jaw dropped. His brain, which had been buzzing with euphoria just moments before, suddenly stalled. "What? Rightful owner? I am the rightful owner. The deed is in my safe upstairs." he shouted, his finger pointing wildly at the second-floor balcony. "Don't mess with me. Who sent you? My wife? She has no right to anything." Mr. Chen calmly opened his folder, produced a laminated copy of the new deed, and held it right in front of Ethan's face. "The deed in your safe has been legally void since yesterday afternoon. This property is now under the name of my client, Mrs. Ava Harrison, and that excavator," Mr. Chen pointed to the heavy machine, which now cut its engine, creating a dramatic silence, "is not here to demolish the house for a condo. It's a rental, here to ensure you can't escape over the fence." Ethan took a step back, his face turning deathly pale. His legs, which had felt so light just moments ago, now trembled violently. He looked left and right, searching for an escape route, but the police had already moved to surround him in a semicircle. Across the street, the window of a black sedan slowly rolled down, revealing a pair of eyes behind dark sunglasses, watching him without expression. It was then that Ethan realized the rumbling he had heard was not the sound of incoming money, but the sound of his world shattering to pieces. "Lies. This is all a setup. You're all in on it together, trying to scam me, right?" Ethan screamed hysterically, his voice breaking with a mixture of panic and blind rage. He tried to push through the police line to attack Mr. Chen, but two officers swiftly grabbed his arms. Ethan's body, clad only in thin silk pajamas, was powerless against their trained grip. In seconds, his hands were twisted behind his back, and the cold, metallic click of handcuffs locked around his wrists. The weight of the cuffs seemed to drag the last remnants of his dignity down to nothing. "Mr. Ethan Cole, you are being detained not just for a property dispute," one of the officers said in a flat tone, reading from the warrant in his hand. "Based on digital evidence submitted by the complainant this morning, you have been identified as the primary suspect in a case of corporate embezzlement from Sterling Pacific Holdings, totaling over $5 million, as well as felony money laundering, with funds diverted for personal asset renovation and online gambling." Ethan's eyes widened, his breath catching in his throat. His pale face turned a ghastly gray. He snapped his head toward Mr. Chen. "Digital evidence? Where did you?" His sentence cut off as his mind pieced together the puzzle he had ignored for so long. His home computer, the flash drive, Ava, the wife he had dismissed as technologically illiterate. "Your wife, Mrs. Harrison, is a law-abiding citizen, Mr. Cole," Mr. Chen interjected, as if reading his mind. "She submitted all the falsified financial reports you stored on your office computer. You were too busy underestimating her to realize that the person who knows best where you've hidden the bodies is the one who lives in the same house with you." Ethan's world imploded. His knees buckled, and he would have collapsed if the officers weren't holding him up. He hadn't just lost this house. He was about to spend the next decade behind bars. His career was over, his reputation destroyed, and his mistress would surely abandon him this very second. Amid the chaos, Ethan's eyes caught the figure across the street. The window of the black sedan now fully revealed Ava's face. She wore her sunglasses. Her expression was calm, no smile of victory, no tears of sadness, just the flat gaze of a judge who had just brought down the gavel. "Ava! Ava, how could you? You disloyal, treacherous woman! I'm your husband!" Ethan screamed hoarsely, struggling like a madman as the police began to drag him toward their cruiser. Neighbors started to emerge from their houses, watching his downfall with scornful looks. Ethan, who had always flaunted his wealth, was now being paraded as a criminal in his pajamas. Inside her car, Ava watched the scene unfold without blinking. Ethan's shouts were muffled by the car window. She saw her husband being forced into the back of the police car, his head pushed down to avoid hitting the doorframe, a gesture that underscored how completely he had lost control of his own life. "Let's go, sir," Ava said softly to her hired driver. "Yes, ma'am. Where to?" "The county courthouse. I need to file the physical divorce papers before lunch," Ava answered firmly. Her hand pressed the power window button. The tinted glass rose smoothly, completely closing off her view of Ethan forever. The sedan pulled away from the curb, leaving the commotion behind. Ava glanced in the rearview mirror one last time. The luxurious house still stood there, tall and proud. Its walls were strong, its roof intact. The drama of Ethan's life had reached its climax. He had crumbled before the house ever could. Ethan wanted to destroy the house for money, but his own greed had destroyed him instead. And the house, like Ava, remained standing whole, dignified, and ready to welcome a new, more worthy beginning.